Chapter 2. The Ritual. When the new spring arrived, young Richard had shed most of his childish ways. The hunting knife at his waist was finally no longer just for show. He began accompanying the village hunters into the mountains, though he never ventured deep into the forest, and never stood on the front lines against beasts. His tasks, assisting, setting traps, and processing game, still marked him as a hunter. Blacksmith Bobby was overjoyed, for Richard's knife had been forged over many nights, from several pieces of his treasured tempered steel. Every time young Richard used it to slay a magical beast, Bobby would be delighted for days. Hunting was always perilous. The sprawling coastal mountains harbored countless magical beasts, and occasionally lost creatures from the deep forests would stray into Rustland village. Young Richard encountered one such creature, a cyan-gray magical wolf. This was a genuine level 2 magical beast, one even the village chief would take seriously. When they encountered the wolf, Richard had only 2 village hunters by his side. It was a grueling battle. All 3 sustained serious injuries, yet they managed to drag the beast's carcass back to the village. What earned Richard the villagers' admiration was his extraordinary composure throughout the deadly struggle. His flawless execution would have been impossible even for the most skilled hunter. And, had little Richard not severed the tendons in the demon wolf's hind legs with a single stroke, the outcome might have been different. Regardless, throughout that year, little Richard faced numerous dangers, yet he remained composed and resourceful. No matter how perilous the situation, he never flinched. At 9 years old, Richard learned courage. This year should have been the easiest, for children of the mountains never lack courage. Yet the courage his mother taught him was different. Richard succeeded, and from then on, his mother no longer called him Little Richard, but My Richard.
My Richard is a real man now.
A real man must also have wisdom.
Tell Mother, who taught you that?
It was written in a book.
Which book? Elaine asked patiently. Not only wizards, but even wizard apprentices possessed vast knowledge. Thus Richard had already learned several languages from Elaine, including one ancient tongue so profound and obscure it was nearly impenetrable. Reading had long ceased to be a challenge for him. He'd even devoured several introductory books on magic during the dull winter months, yet Elaine couldn't recall any such phrase from any of those texts.
The one in the attic, of course. It's full of fascinating things. I never knew the world was so vast before.
That book? It is quite interesting. My Richard, a true man must possess wisdom, but perseverance, strength, and courage are even more precious. My Richard is so clever. You'll never lack wisdom when you grow up. So first, Mama must cultivate these qualities in you. Understand?
And happiness.
Yes, and happiness. Have you been happy these past years, my Richard?
Not always. Piru bullied me and I hate breadfruit. Also, Mom, what kind of person was Dad really?
Your father was a true man.
I know. He's also the worst villain, the person Mom hates the most.
Elaine smiled. Every year Richard would ask questions like this several times, and she always gave the same answer. By now Richard could recite it by heart, but he was a smart child. He could sense the deep hatred in Elaine's voice whenever she mentioned his father. Over time, Richard came to hate this father just as much. Many times, Richard would wake in the middle of the night to hear his mother weeping softly. A child's logic is simple. His mother loved him most, and he loved her most. What she hated, he hated too. Every so often Richard would ask about his father. Partly out of curiosity, as he grew older, his mother shared more stories about him, and partly because Richard genuinely wanted to understand his father better, so he could avenge his mother when he grew up. As for how to exact that vengeance, he was still just a child and had no clear plan. Yet the resolve was already etched deep within his heart. This time, however, Elaine didn't tell Richard any more about his father. She only said that she had spent very little time with him and knew no more than that. Someday, you'll come to know your father very well, Elaine suddenly said, for some reason. As soon as the words left her mouth, her expression changed, as if something had twisted in her heart. Elaine herself didn't know why she had spoken those words. Richard keenly sensed his mother's mood suddenly souring. He quietly stuck out his tongue, muttered, "I'm going to read," and dashed off to the back room. That was Elaine's study, with the potions laboratory right next door. The study contained few books, mostly texts on magical fundamentals, potions basics, and the continent's history, geography, and customs, all fitting for Elaine's role as a magical apprentice. Richard loved reading here at night. A magic lamp hung in the study, its light dim yet sufficient. With just a small charge of Elaine's magic, it would glow all night long. Oil was expensive, so only the village chief, the blacksmith, the most powerful hunters, and Elaine could afford to keep lamps burning late into the night. Within this humble, yet cozy little room, Richard quietly spent his childhood. Through those thick volumes, he glimpsed another world, one far broader, more complex, loftier, and more magnificent than Rusland. Little Richard secretly vowed that when he grew into the village's finest hunter, he would take his mother away from Rusland village to see the world beyond the mountains. Elaine sat alone in the parlor, hearing the rustle of pages turning. Young Richard was studying diligently again. He had mastered the fundamentals of magic knowledge thoroughly but had yet to truly begin learning spells. Elaine had even forbidden him from practicing meditation. On the continent, aspiring mages typically began their first meditations at 4 or 5 years old, accumulating sufficient spiritual energy by age 10 to commence formal magical training and power cultivation. Yet little Richard felt no sense of loss, partly because he understood nothing of this, partly because he believed his mother was always right. Elaine sat quietly. Just because she had spoken one extra word tonight, the gates of memory had quietly opened, and countless long-buried memories surfaced one after another, impossible to suppress. Her head began to ache slightly. Elaine gently rubbed her temples and sighed almost imperceptibly. Her gaze fell on the calendar on the table, where she suddenly noticed a prominent mark. In just over 2 weeks, it would be Richard's 10th birthday. 10 marked the threshold from boyhood to adolescence, while 13 or 14 barely counted as adulthood. Had 10 years truly slipped by unnoticed? Elaine stared blankly at the dancing light within the magic lamp. The polished brass body reflected her face. She wasn't beautiful, merely a pretty woman, yet in Rusland village, she was considered one of the most attractive. 10 years had passed, yet time had left no trace on her face. Were it not for her clothing styles leaning toward those of a middle-aged woman, few would guess her age. A stranger encountering her would surely think Elaine was barely in her 20s. The face reflected in the brass lampshade felt unfamiliar to Elaine, too ordinary, for it was not the face she had been born with. Long ago, she had never imagined she would live such a simple, unadorned, and hard life, and that it would last a decade. Yet watching Richard grow day by day, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment within.
My Richard will soon be 10. Mother has prepared a special ceremony to celebrate my Richard growing up.
Yay, will there be presents?
Yes, a gift that will stay with you for life. But you need to rest well these next few days, understand? It's very late now. Time for bed.